Seattle is a town right now where we were talking today. I said, does Seattle think that they downgraded at corner today by losing Maxwell and gaining Williams?
Yeah, definitely. There's no doubt about that. I think Kerry Williams is a good recovery. I think he fits with the style of corner that they like. We've seen that they don't mind corners who talk a little bit, right? So Kerry's not going to feel out of place here. He can run his mouth as much as he wants. They like that longer, aggressive corner. They like the guys who are kind of show the feistiness to fight their way in, and Kerry Williams, a lesser-round pick. But look, Byron Maxwell played top-tier cornerback last year. I think he makes the Pro Bowl if he's not playing in that secondary, and just the reluctance people had to put 4 members of a single secondary in the Pro Bowl.
Yeah, that's one of the things we were wondering here, Danny, is, all right, you leave Seattle, you come to Philly. Is he really the question we asked was, is he $63 million better than Kerry Williams? Is he a significant upgrade here? Or are they, we looked at a lot of the numbers. I couldn't believe how similar the numbers were for these two guys. I mean, the amount of catches they both gave up, the amount of targets, the penalties. Maxwell penalized more than Williams. The people hated him here because he got penalized all the time, Williams. He had less penalties in 3 more games. And I said, ooh, people might be a little disappointed. Do you think that he will be able to stand on his own as the guy?
I do think so. I think the one question with Byron Maxwell, and it's not the penalties, it's his health. His first 2 years here, when he and Richard Sherman were part of the same draft class. And that training camp, Maxwell was a 6th-round pick coming out of Clemson. Sherman was a 5th-round pick. And that training camp, all eyes were on Maxwell. And Maxwell was ahead of Sherman on the depth chart. He ended up pulling a hamstring. And that was kind of the story of his first 2 years. He couldn't stay healthy. He had a bunch of no structural, no knee problems, just a lot of strained muscles. And it was really frustrating both for him and the team. In terms of ability and the way he plays, he is a fighter. He absolutely is tenacious in the way he covers. Yeah, I think he can stand on his own as one of the top-tier cornerbacks. When you ask, is he worth $63 million, that's a tough thing to answer, because there will be people who tell you that Richard Sherman even is overpaid for as good as he is. I know that opponents picked on Maxwell last year. Nobody threw at Richard Sherman, and Maxwell acquitted himself very, very well. I think the biggest question with him is his health.
Yeah, and you wonder, how much he's only played in 17 or started 17 games in his career, and now he's going to be looked at here, especially, the fans in Philadelphia are looking at this guy like he's, the savior, much like when Asamoah came here. They turned on Asamoah in a minute's time. If things are going bad, how will Maxwell handle it?
Well, he's got a very steady demeanor. Here's the difference between him and Asamoah. Asamoah was changing a defensive system. Byron Maxwell and Seattle play one of the simpler defensive styles that you're going to find. They don't do a lot of exotic coverages. I think it translates exceptionally well for whatever you ask him to do. You know what he does really well? He runs and he hits and he covers. And that's going to work in any defense. I think that he's got the mentality. And when you say he only started 17 games, here's the thing. You saw Brandon Browner start in the Super Bowl. By midway through the 2013 season, it was very clear that Byron Maxwell was passing Browner on the depth chart. Philadelphia signed itself a rising cornerback. The question, again, I think, is how much can he stay healthy, and how much of this past 2 seasons was somewhat of a contract push for him? Can he maintain that discipline to keep himself in shape and stay healthy?
Talking with Danny O'Neill, 710 ESPN, Seattle. Byron Maxwell here. Kerry Williams in Seattle now. And you mentioned that, yes, you think it's a little bit of a downgrade, but ultimately you think that Williams will be a guy that starts and plays pretty well out there? Do they anticipate him kind of plugging right in perfectly?
It depends on what else happens this offseason. Seattle's dealing with a couple of moving parts. Jeremy Lane is a cornerback who's been very, very good for him, but he suffered that horrible compound fracture in the Super Bowl. He also tore a knee ligament there. There's a real question about when and whether he will be healthy for this season. They brought in Will Blackman, who's played previously both for Jacksonville, and John Schneider had drafted him when both were in Green Bay. He's got some ability. Williams is going to get an opportunity to compete, but there's certainly nothing guaranteed in that deal.
What did you make of the deal for Graham? Obviously, that's newly fresh on the market as well. Jimmy Graham's coming to Seattle. Is that something that I would assume is just huge for that offense?
I think so. It's surprising to me a little bit. This offense runs more than any other offense, and especially now that San Francisco has really kind of changed the mold of what they do. And Jimmy Graham is a receiving specialist as a tight end. He's not someone who's exceptionally tough as a blocker. But Seattle had a clear need at that position. They certainly value getting that sort of dynamic playmaker. Pete Carroll will say he always looks for unique gifts, and Graham certainly has that as a receiving threat. And they're trading a first-round pick in Max Unger, and probably in the overall scheme of things, that first-round pick is the more valuable chip that got traded. It's interesting to me that this team, after the Percy Harvin trade, is still willing to kind of dip its toe into the waters of signing other teams' dynamic playmakers.
Did you say chip, and trade it in the same sentence there, Danny? Did you do that?
Yeah, apparently he does some of that. I've always thought if there was one guy that really fits Chip's offense, that mobile fleet of foot, it's Sam Bradford. I mean, he's a real. He's Marcus Mariota before Marcus Mariota existed, right?
Boy. So you've seen Bradford a couple of times, obviously NFC West out there. He didn't play at all last year, limited the year before. So I don't know if you have a strong opinion on this deal, but obviously Bradford for full. I'm of the opinion that Bradford, there's got to be another move up Chip's sleeve here, right?
I would think so. I think that if they're going to bring, you can't count a season on Bradford, and especially given everything that's happened with Chip, I would think there's a fair amount of pressure on him this season to produce, and Bradford's shown that it's really tough to rely on him to be healthy. I saw him his best season, and it was the 2010 season when he was a rookie. He played exceptionally well, looked really, really good. Unfortunately, that's been as good as it's gotten for him. He hasn't been surrounded with a lot of talent. He certainly hasn't been in an offense that emphasized dynamic downfield threats, but it is puzzling to me. Of all the offenses in the league that I thought would be a fit, Philadelphia would have been about the last in the bottom quartile of it.
Me too. And then the contract, $13 million. You're only paying Foles $700,000. It does seem that's got to line up for something different here. It almost, everything's kind of pointing that way. So a wild day. What has been the free agent reaction to the NFC champions out there? Has it been a pretty? Were people upset when Maxwell left, or were they kind of understanding that he was going to go?
Everybody knew he was going. I think the writing had been on the wall for quite some time. They had extended a couple guys. There was a little bit of gratitude that Seattle didn't have more free agents on the market. You had K.J. Wright and Cliff Averill, two guys who both re-signed during the season. But I think there was a little bit of relief that Seattle didn't get rated harder. And right now, there's the upswing of nobody really saw the Graham move coming and exactly what that means for this team and where they see themselves and what they want to do at tight end. Everybody's kind of trying to piece that together right now.
Danny O'Neill, 710 ESPN Seattle, one of the great stations out there.